understand evolution, and I have to protect my kids from understanding it. We will not give in to the thinkers.
You people are as loud as you are ignorant. Now get back on your turnip trucks and go home. That is an insultingly accurate stereotype, sir.
Welcome back for another edition of SHYP's Bible study on Does God Exist? This is Lesson 8, which is essentially a review of the first 7 lessons. So for those of you that haven't joined us yet, this study takes a look at the proofs for God using just the scientific evidence. So far, I've been told that in these videos I seem creepy. I'll try not to do that. So, to recap what we've done so far, we began to look at the universe. How did we get here? We took a look at the fine-tuning argument and how we're located in the Goldilocks zone. Natural selection simply can't answer some of these questions in the universe and the origin of life, which brings us to the next argument, which was DNA. And we had multiple parts on the DNA. Science doesn't have an answer for where the information, where the code came from in each of our individual cells. Natural selection doesn't work, chance isn't realistic, and self-organization just doesn't add up. Which then brings us to today's lesson, where we're going to look at some Futurama clips while also discussing some of the other evolutionary problems.
All life was created in its present form 7,000 years ago by a fantastical creature from outer space.
Bunk!
Oh? If your elitist East Coast evolution is real, why has no one found the missing link between modern humans and ancient apes?
We did find it. It's called Homo erectus.
Then you have proven my case, sir. For no one has found the link between apes and this Homo erectus.
Yes, they have. It's called Homo habilis.
Aha! But no one has found the missing link between ape and the so-called Homo habilis.
Yes, they have. It's called Australopithecus africanus.
Oh, I've got you now. Fair enough. But where, then, is the missing link between apes and this Darwinius macilli? Answer me that, Professor.
Oh. Okay, granted that one missing link is still missing. But just because we haven't found it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Pshaw! Things don't exist simply because you believe in them. Thus saith the almighty creature in the sky!
The first thing I'd like to point out about this scientific chart are all the question marks. Notice where the question marks appear. Next, let's take a look at the supposed missing links that we do have. The 3 mentioned in the cartoon were Homo erectus, Homo habilis, and Australopithecus africanus. The biggest problem scientists have with these missing links is that they overlap. One does not evolve into another, as the cartoon suggests. Rather, if you look at the chart, they supposedly had a similar ancestor. And remember, notated with a question mark. The chart's not linear. That's because science has been led to the conclusion that Homo erectus and Homo sapien lived at the same time. Homo erectus and Homo habilis lived at the same time, and Homo habilis and Australopithecus lived at the same time. The obvious question then is, how did one transition into the other if they lived simultaneously? And there are, of course, other problems with these, but we're not going to get into all those today. I will go ahead and show you some of the evidence that evolutionists do present. And here's a model of an Australopithecus alongside a gorilla skull. Also a human skull next to a Neanderthal skull. Look, it's not what they tell you. It's all about your worldview. They exclude the possibility of God in their research before they even begin. Not only did Neanderthal man live alongside Homo sapien, but they had a larger brain capacity. And there's much evidence that they were quite intelligent. What worldview do you hold to? Is creation gradually getting better? Is it staying the same? Or is creation gradually getting worse?
Cambrian explosion. Now, according to the standard geological timescale, that took place about 530 million years ago. But it took place within a very narrow window of time, geologically speaking, between 2 and 10 million years, depending on who you talk to. And in the same seam in the rock all the way around the world, whether you're looking in the Cambrian strata in China, or in the Burgess Shale in Canada, or in England, you have evidence of the sudden appearance of all the major new, what are called body plans, the new ways of arranging organs and tissues to form fundamentally new types of animals. Now, according to the Darwinian picture of the history of life, you should have this great big branching tree where one thing morphs gradually into another through small incremental variations that are produced by natural selection acting on random variations and mutations. But instead of that gradual morphing, what we see in the fossil record is a very sudden appearance of all the major forms of life, the major body plans, represented by the gold dots. The blue dots are all the missing evidence, all the things that ought to be there on Darwin's theory that aren't there, the ancestral precursors that just aren't there. So what we have is something that's very difficult. It was difficult for Darwin to explain at the time. It's very difficult to explain now, not only because the fossil record and the picture in the history of life that the fossils provide isn't consistent with Darwin's picture of the history of life, but also because of the other mystery we've already talked about. If you want to give your computer a new function, what do you have to give it? Code. You want to produce a new form of life from a pre-existing form of life, what do you have to provide for it? Code. Okay? 2 million years, 10 million years sounds like a great deal of time. But when you run the math and do the math on how difficult it is to build by chance mutations, even a single protein. Remember we ran some of those numbers in a couple lessons ago. It turns out this is just as big a problem for Darwinian evolution as it is for chemical evolution. There's not enough time, the mutation rates aren't fast enough, there's simply not enough time to search all those possible ways of arranging things to generate new proteins.
Hey look! I found a robot fossil!
That's a bed spring, you dumb bed spring. There are no robot fossils.
What? Who says I didn't evolve?
Everybody! Robots were created quite recently. It was in all the papers.
But I used to tell my students, you will know them by their euphemisms. In paleontology, there are lots of examples of geologically sudden appearances of major new groups of organisms. There's the mammalian radiation. That's the euphemism, sudden appearance. About 13 to 15 orders of new mammals come suddenly into the fossil record in the Eocene period. But before that, the big bloom, not the Big Bang, the big bloom of flowering plants in the Cretaceous. That's also a sudden appearance event. There's something called the marine Mesozoic revolution. Okay? Another sudden appearance of the sea reptiles, and then the Cambrian explosion as well. So there's lots of examples of the sudden appearance of innovation in form and function in the history of life. And I think that the overall pattern is one that cannot be explained simply by the undirected mechanism of natural selection acting on random variation.
Professor, is this your only water source? It looks like Diet Dr. Pepper. It's not that bad. It's just laden with toxic minerals, but not for long. What's in the tube? Microscopic nanobots. They're tiny robots I designed to eat up nasty irritants.
Piece that adds to that picture just a bit more is this exquisite, I think these are real wonders. These miniature machines that are being discovered inside cells. This is an animation of a machine called a bacterial flagellar motor. My colleague Michael Behe has made this famous in his book, Darwin's Black Box. But this motor has O-rings and bushings and a drive shaft and a U-joint and a rotor and a stator, and it's an exquisite piece of engineering. It's a true rotary engine. It rotates in some organisms at 100,000 RPM and can turn directions on a quarter of a turn. It's hardwired into something called a signal transduction circuit, which gives the organism information from the environment that helps it direct itself towards the food it needs. And this little motor resides in a little tiny bacterium, the E. coli. You've probably heard of it from some of the hamburger scandal fame. Okay, people get sick. But anyway, what I like to say is it's high tech in low life.
The nanobots have gotten more complex.
What's that you say? Those robots evolved all by themselves, you say?
It wasn't by themselves. I put them there. I'm a genius. Get over it.
We do have mutations that we see almost like every day, but we call them cancer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that's a literal way to describe how we're getting worse.
Wow.
A whole forest grew overnight.
All these trees are robotic. I can't believe how quickly they sprung up.
I can. Robots do everything faster, including evolving and believing how quickly things spring up.
Help, please! Everybody grab a club!
big tough water guy. Why don't you come up here on land?
Quite contrary to the message of the new atheists, the Dawkinses and the Hitchens. I sometimes wonder what planet they're living on. Are they even aware of this stuff going on? They're not talking about it in their books. They're critiquing the arguments of medieval philosophers many times. And so, quite contrary to the message that science has made belief in God delusional, I think science is providing a form of support that is, in any other realm of inquiry, would be considered overwhelming, beyond reasonable doubt. Not a proof in the deductive sense of absolute certainty, but certainly beyond reasonable doubt.
Don't be afraid, little guys. I'm not going to hurt you.
Nice net.
But you can speak?
Dread my looks! A fully evolved robot human!
I'm Dr. Widnar, a naturalist.
And I'm Bender, baby. My human slaves and I come from a planet where organic life and robotic life evolved side by side.
Oh, shut up.
Amazing. I theorized that carbon-based fat-filled life could exist, but until today, I never had any proof.
Good for you. Can we go home now?
The most prominent atheist among all the philosophers of the 20th century is a man named Anthony Flew. As a young man, he debated C.S. Lewis at Oxford on the God question. Late in life, in 2004, he announced that he had come to accept the existence of some kind of God or creator, based, he said, largely on developments in modern science. Interestingly, he referenced the work of these crazy American design theorists and said that his view was becoming increasingly like theirs, and he specifically mentioned the problem of explaining the origin of the information in DNA by reference to any materialistic explanation. So, and it underscores something an historian of science has said, Frederick Burnham. He says, the idea that God created the universe is a more respectable hypothesis today than at any time in the last 100 years.
Thank you. I must say, I'm so proud to see what you've blossomed into since I first created your ancestors.
What?
Well, I thought you knew. You all evolved from some filth-gobbling nanobots I designed. I dumped them in one of your ponds a few days ago.
But this is creationist talk.
He speaks lies. The Earth was created in eons, not days.
Yes, relative to you it was eons, but, well, look at this hologram I took the day before yesterday of a robot frolicking with a robo-dinosaur.
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
You're under arrest for crimes against science.
No!
Well, there's not much else to say after that. Sorry, I'll work on that not being creepy. Join us again next week for lesson number 9, The Moral Necessity of Theism.
Hey, Professor, I'm a flying spaghetti monster. You seriously believe I'm descended from some kind of flightless manicotti?
Yes!